serious note, no, it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank my wife and my daughter. Our sons are at home. Thank you for your service, sons. We have 4 Vietnam veterans in our family. My dad was Special Forces. Her father was out in the Pentagon, and so we appreciate all military families and those who serve. And to the mothers, happy belated Mother's Day. I know we're a couple days past, but you know my priority. Takes precedent. So I want to first say thank you because you know we take this very seriously. And brother, thank you so much for the introduction, for letting them know, because for some of you all that may not know, again, my name is Daniel Blackmen. I ran in 2020 and we made the runoff in 2021. And as frustrating as it was that folks didn't just go one more name down. We elected Ossoff and we elected Warnock. And sister, it was one, 30,000 votes away from becoming the first Democrat to be elected statewide outside of a federal office in over 23 years. So we came close. We got 2.3 million plus votes, and I wasn't in my feelings too long because we got a call from the White House a month later, and I ended up running the Environmental Protection Agency in the Southeast on behalf of President Biden and Vice President Harris. So I think it turned out pretty good. So I want you all to know my service hasn't stopped. In 2016, I was Bernie Sanders' political director. I lived in Savannah for 6 months on and off. So I mean, ask her. It's not comfortable when you got to be away from home that long. But so I know coastal Georgia. I know these areas. I know Pooler. I know Brunswick. These are areas that have been critical to me. And every time we've been invited, we've showed up. And I want y'all to know you're not just getting a candidate that's excited about being on the ballot. You're getting somebody that knows coastal Georgia. I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, and more than anything else, I understand the most fundamental rule in the state of Georgia as a Democrat, and that's that it is not Atlanta and the rest of Georgia, right? We got 159 counties. We can't win without coastal Georgia, rural Georgia. We can't win without North Georgia. So I need you guys to understand that me being here is not because I owe anybody any favors. It's because we want to be here, right? Like I want y'all to understand we want to be here. During COVID, it was very, very difficult. My daughter had not yet been born. I could not go into the hospital with my wife during that time because COVID protocols and not wanting to transmit the virus. When she was born, I remember right before that era, the Ahmaud Arbery situation had been going on. So we had been in Brunswick, literally, how many times? Probably 10 or 15 times I've been down here in Brunswick protesting, marching. And so even when I'm not on the ballot, I'm here. And I want y'all to know that because as Democrats, we win in one of 2 ways, right? And then I'll get into this Public Service Commission race. The first way is by having people, as you mentioned, that are not just going to be out here when they're running for something. Okay. We need folks that's going to be out here when it floods. Folks are going to be out here when a light bill is too high, and people are going to be out here when they're trying to gentrify our community or take money away from the ports, which the Trump administration just announced that they want to rescind money that I was influential in getting with the Environmental Protection Agency under the Inflation Reduction Act. We got over $15 million up front just for the Port of Savannah and the Port of Brunswick. And so these are things that I can point to, right? And this is a contested primary, so I want y'all to understand, I ain't afraid of no primary, which is good. That's number one. And I want you to look up the people that's running. Don't stop voting for Democrats because they ought to be behind their name. All right. Vote for people that have the credentials, the record, and that really, and I don't know your name. What's your name right here in the back? Yeah. How old are you? 11. I got a 4-year-old, 13-year-old, and we got 2 in college, right? So this is about their generation, right? How we show up, how we organize, how we get excited, they're watching. Okay. If our body language is off, their body language is off. If we're apathetic about voting, they're apathetic about voting. If we're excited about voting and we're excited about the fact that we get to win 2 statewide seats in an off election year, they're gonna be excited. So here's why I'm here. The Public Service Commission, how many of y'all first of all know what the Public Service Commission is? Just wave at me. All right. Well, if you don't know, you have a light bill. Yeah. If you have a light bill, you need to know what the Public Service Commission does because here's the first thing I want to tell you. Georgia has amongst the highest energy burden in the United States. We have the 5th highest energy burden in the United States, according to data from organizations like Wallet Hub that actually track data on senior citizens on fixed income, working families, and also in just looking at what's called energy burden, okay? I'm gonna put this down. Energy burden can be calculated in a very simple way, because I don't want to talk over y'all, I want to talk to you, right? Energy burden is very simple. The amount of money that stays in our pockets and the amount of money that we have to spend to keep the lights on in our house, right? The Georgia Public Service Commission regulates our gas, our utility, our electric, and also they have, eminent domain abilities, but they also regulate telecommunications, right? And all of us in this room know that when it comes to energy and when it comes to broadband, we have a lot of areas that have been left behind. And this is one of the things about this seat that's so critical, is when we think of voting for people, a lot of times, and I'm gonna use a baseball analogy, we try to hit home runs every time it's Democrats. What does that mean? We just wanna elect the governor. We wanna elect the mayor. We go for those really big positions. I like singles and doubles, right? I like getting on base, right? You get on base with school board, county commission, public service commission races, down ballot elections like the Georgia labor commissioner and the agricultural commissioners. These are individuals that drive up ballot momentum. How many of y'all heard this week that Brian Kemp is not running for against John Ossoff? Keep your hand up if you heard Marjorie Taylor Greene's not running for Senate either, right? Now, before we celebrate and take a victory lap, that bothers me. And I'm gonna tell you why it bothers me, because that means they were talking. And if you read the paper over the last 24 hours, Brian Kemp's been in DC for 2 days, and it hasn't been because he's trying to go see AOC or one of the Democratic congressional members. It's because he went to meet with the president. And what they're doing is they're trying to forge this alliance between MAGA Republicans and conservatives. And we can't sit on our hands folded and sit out any election. If I were on the ballot, I would either be down here advocating for Dr. Alicia Johnson, or I would be out here making sure folks rally up the vote, right? She's my witness. She knows how much our marriage and our family has been put on hold for the service of the community. It's not fair to her, but that's something that we signed up for as a family. So I want you all to understand that the Public Service Commission is a tremendous opportunity because, number one, in 1992, the first seat since Reconstruction that Republicans won was the Public Service Commission. First seat. And ultimately, after Governor, what do you call him? Zell Miller, thank you. I was about to say zigzag, but before Governor Miller, right? I mean, after Governor Miller, you had Roy Barnes, right? Yeah. And we thought we had a lot. We had Thurman Baker, we had Michael Thurman, we had Kathy Cox, Mark Taylor. Yeah. See, we had a roster. But guess what? People didn't pay attention to the Public Service Commission. And then you had a guy named Lauren McDonald that changed his name to Bubba. That was a Democrat for 30 years. That ended up saying, you know what? I'm gonna change my name and I'm gonna switch parties. And we saw that exodus of quote unquote Democrats shift over to the Republican side. It started with the Public Service Commission. Wow. The first seat Republicans flipped, Bobby Baker, 1992, look it up, was the Public Service Commission. Because they understood that where our eyes are not watching is where they will plant their seeds, where they will start. And I think that the administration that is currently in place has made enough disruption for us to be, I won't use the words because my daughter's in here, but to be ticked off enough to not just sit behind social media. Okay. Social media don't vote. I got a couple of yard signs, I'll get them out. The yard signs don't vote. We need people to understand that our frustration, whether you have Georgia Power, an EMC, a MEAG, how many of y'all know about nuclear plant voting? Yeah. Well, if you don't know, another thing I want to tell you is you are paying for something for the next 53 years. Yeah. Whether you know about it or not. Get you. If most people don't even know what an itemized utility bill is. You need to see everything you're paying for. Exactly. Your utility bill isn't just the amount of energy that's used when you flip your light on and off. Your utility bill has everything to do with you when there's a storm and a utility truck has to drive and get the power back on, you're paying for the fuel for that. Whenever there's a natural disaster and there are other things that have to be done, there are fixed costs. And I'm not against costs to recover, because I don't want to be like Texas was in 2021 where they had an ice storm and the whole state lost power. I don't want to be Texas. But what I don't want is when a nuclear project that was supposed to be $14 billion costs $35 billion, and we got to pay for that, that's where I have a problem.
That is a problem.
When we're 7 years behind schedule on something, a senior citizen on a fixed income in the state of Georgia or anywhere in the country, when your income is fixed and your utility bill goes up, you don't have room to determine between your medication and your light bill. And that's what this race is about. This race is about understanding that Democrats have to start, we gotta get up off our butts and we gotta go all the way down the ballot. I don't care who runs for governor, and I don't care how much we wanna see John Ossoff back in the Senate.
Okay.
If we have the best Democratic gubernatorial candidate in the world in John Ossoff, that is not enough for them to win. We need down ballot candidates that can build momentum all the way up so that when we talk about congressional seats, like the one y'all just had opened up down here, when you start talking about congressional seats in these areas, that's why the Public Service Commission matters. So when you think about this seat, I want you to think of more than just energy, because we also have a thing called data centers in Georgia. And most people don't realize what data centers are going to do. Before I go into that, I want you to understand, when I was the regional administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, there were 10 of us. 10 of us get appointed by the president to run regions in the United States. I ran the Southeast United States, which is 8 states, the most conservative part of the United States. I had all the conservative states. Only 2 of the 8 states had Republican governors. That was Roy Moore and Andy Beshear in Kentucky. So North Carolina and Kentucky, only 2 states were Democrats. So you can imagine me trying to work and bring climate infrastructure to Governor DeSantis in Florida, right? That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day.
Okay.
But those are the things that I had to work through, which I want you to understand is what qualifies me, having to work with Republicans on the agriculture side, the energy side, on water infrastructure. And what we did for the state of Georgia was we bought over $50 million, 53 to be exact, $53 million for electrifying school buses. Why? I grew up with asthma. I know how tough it is when you live in a state that has poor air quality days. And so for me, and then I have a son that plays college football, he played high school football with an emergency inhaler on the sideline. So when I look at the quality days, one of the things we did right here in this corridor, especially from the Port of Savannah throughout Georgia, was we implemented trackers on homes that could measure the amount of emissions that 18-wheelers were putting off into our communities. Because the majority of those emissions that come into our communities, if we're honest, they go into poor communities, Black and brown communities, and marginalized communities. Which is why our children miss the most school days, and our seniors are having the most high impact of respiratory related illnesses, and then our working class is missing the most days. So when we think of the Public Service Commission, I don't want y'all to just think about your light bill. I want you to think about how all of these things play in to your daily lives. That's why I drove 4 hours to be here with y'all.
Okay.
I could have jumped on a Zoom call or sent a box of flyers. I know y'all would have got them out. But I need y'all to see and hear from me, because this is really, really important for us to be able to rebuild the infrastructure of our state. Data centers are going to be critical, because while I'm not against data centers, right, I have over 30,000 unopened emails. Don't judge me. But over the years, I just get a lot of junk mail. I get a lot of spam, right? It's something called a cloud. It's not in the sky, right? That's a data center. Data centers hold all that information from unopened emails. Whenever folks use ChatGPT, there was a study that just came out that said for every hour of ChatGPT that's used in the United States, it costs upwards of $20 million. Just to go on there and put something in ChatGPT. And we don't understand that. The demand on artificial intelligence and the demand on information that we want, the demand to be able to Google something and get an answer back in a minute, the demand for our children that are graduating and going to school to be able to understand how information works, this is going to be a critical part of what is going on. But guess what it's going to cost?
Okay.
And I know if I asked y'all to raise your hand, how many of y'all think Meta or Google or Microsoft or Apple is going to pay for it? It's the same scenario as Plant Vogtle. Not one Georgia Power shareholder paid for that $15 billion in cost overruns. And not one executive or shareholder at Meta, at Apple, at Microsoft, or any of these companies are going to be paying that bill. You're going to pay the bill. Whether that data center is in Brunswick or Savannah or Columbus or Albany or Macon, no matter where it is, we're going to fit the bill. Because you have an organization, which is why myself and Dr. Johnson is running, that is fighting to make sure that we put checks and balances in place. Each of those commissioners, 5 Republicans, 5 commissioners, 3 of the 5 were appointed, have voted 6 of the last 7 years for a rate increase. 6 of the last 7 years. Georgia Power has been profitable 20 of the last 20 years. And you mean to tell me that rates have to continuously increase without regard? Now, let me be very clear with you. Me being elected doesn't make your light bill go down overnight. It just doesn't. but it puts them on notice to understand that when bills and policies are put before the Public Service Commission that are given through what's called the docket process, they give these dockets, you read through it, the Public Service Commission has a staff that makes recommendation, and then the Public Service Commissioners vote. But guess who they meet with that they don't got to sign in with? Georgia Power executives, utility company executives. You think they want to tell you what check Georgia Power wrote to their campaign? You think they want to tell you what amount of resources or promises or gift they were able to give to say we don't want solar, we want more fossil fuel? When we ran the first time for the Public Service Commission in 2020, we overwhelmingly outperformed other Democrats in Republican districts. And here's why. Because you can't talk about the Public Service Commission and try and say that's about trans kids playing sports, or it's about abortion, or it's about DEI. No, it's about your light bill. They couldn't argue that. So when I went to Juliet, Georgia, right outside of Macon, and I was talking about Plant Share, and we were talking about the amount of coal ash in the water, when I was in Savannah and I was talking about the fact that tritium is in the water in Savannah because of the nuclear facilities that draw water out, and tritium only affects a woman's reproductive system, these aren't conversations people are having. And I want you to understand that because, again, I'm going to clearly separate myself from the other Democrats. I think they're great people, but we can't afford to put somebody in a position that's going to be a Democrat and have never touched ground in any of our counties. Okay, just can't. And I'm sorry. I think the time for being pleasant and cordial as a Democrat is over. Because what got us into this position is allowing people to be in positions with no accountability, no transparency, and quite frankly, no backbone. Okay. And we got people that are running for office. We got people that's running our cities and doing things, making deals on the side while we vote for them every 4 years, every 2 years, every 6 years. And my father was a United States Army Ranger. He didn't play. And he's the one that taught me the first definition of insanity, which is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Right? And we lose every year because we put the same time and effort into the same thing. And our kids start off at 11 and then they turn 21 and they say, what happened in 10 years? Okay. And our families and our communities that we said, this is the most important election of your lifetime, and they vote and nothing changes. So I'm not just here because I'm on the ballot. I'm here to tell y'all that if we don't wake up today and start thinking about 2026, we will be in this position for another lifetime. Yeah. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm not waiting for help to come. That's right. It's just me. Regardless, win, lose, draw, whatever happens in this election, which we overwhelmingly plan to win, but I want y'all to know I'm not going anywhere. I mean, y'all probably be a little tired of me because I'm telling y'all, the thing about it is we have to stay consistent. We got to stay out. That's why my other children who were not here, they were that size when we were campaigning. And I want y'all to understand that this is a service to what we're doing. So I want to tell you 3 more things about the Public Service Commission. I want to ask if anyone has any questions or any interaction, and then I want to tell you what I need from you. And then we gonna hang out because we drove too far to trying to drive home tonight. So we gonna stay. But so number 1, this seat that I'm running for, we have to run for again next year. We are running to finish the appointed term of the Public Service Commission because there was a lawsuit that was held in 2022. So I'm the last person on it as a Democrat to run for the Public Service Commission in this state. The last time we had Democrats on the ballot, there was a court case because groups around the state, like the Georgia Conservation Voters, they filed a lawsuit that said if you have to vote for the Public Service Commission by district, then why is it a statewide election? Because most people in this room think, well, this gentleman, Mr. Blackmen, is District 3. That's Fulton, DeKalb, and Clayton. Why am I voting for him up there? It's not up there. Because I still vote for everything that affects the entire state. And the reason why they did this was because in the 80s, what Republicans did, and we can go all the way back to like the Jim Crow era about how the black vote was suppressed. But what happened in modern history with the Public Service Commission was they changed that because they felt that South Georgia needed representation. So they made it statewide so that by district, it would give representation across the board by electing them. But the majority of black and brown folks lived up in metro Atlanta. So the process itself arguably is already off. The Public Service Commission started as a railroad commission. So I want you to understand that when we think about these types of races, we have to understand how they were created and constructed to basically dilute the vote. And that's why Governor Kemp and Secretary of State Rafflesberger are talking about purging the vote. This isn't new. This is what Governor Kemp did the first time Stacey Abrams ran. He purged 40,000 votes off. He was a sitting Secretary of State running for governor and had the audacity to purge votes and ask you to tell him about it. And so they're saying now that if these votes are, if you are not voting in the last two elections, this will be the second one, then by November, they'll purge the vote. And that's why I'm here. We can't afford as Democrats to take this year off. We can't afford it. Could you imagine Kamala Harris, who I worked for the last 3 years, lost this state by 115,000 votes. Right. There are 700,000 registered and active voters in Georgia. Let me repeat that. There are 700, it's more than that, but there are at least minimum 700,000 registered and active voters in Georgia. Now imagine you cut that percentage in half. Imagine taking that and the whole 700,000 gone. And then a percentage of the 115,000 that voted last year that may not vote over the summer, and then over in November, gone for next year. We can't sit this election out. So the first one is understanding the importance of this race, but secondly, understanding how critical this is to the re-election of Jon Ossoff and every other Democrat that's going to put their name on the ballot next year. See, Republicans are banking on us staying out of this election. They're banking on it. They're saying it's going to be an off year, turnout's going to be low, and it'll be lower. But what I think is that we're more frustrated on our side by seeing what I call the Musk-Trump administration. We're more frustrated at what we see by them and their attack on working families, which is why I massively support labor. Because those working families around this state, we just received the endorsement from the Working Families Party in Georgia. And we know that it's important for us to receive that. But you know, while we're sitting here watching all the shenanigans that they know is not going to be held in court, they're doing things like passing executive orders to cut what's called LIHEAP. How many of y'all have ever heard of the Low Income Heat and Energy Assistance Program? So for senior citizens that can't pay their bills that need federal assistance, that's gone. Trump cut that in February. So that what's left of it will be divvied out for the rest of the year. Can you imagine how many folks that need power because they need to cool their insulin because they have diabetes? Or how many people whose children need light and electricity to be able to study? Folks that are working hard and have done nothing. Federal workers who've lost their jobs at a stroke of a pen, whose power will be cut off in a hot summer and a cold winter. And you can look this up. A decade ago on the south side of Chicago, when this similar thing happened, when energy assistance was cut, they had the highest rate of senior deaths in one summer than they had in the previous 4 summers. All over the fact that the majority of their senior population had not had access to air conditioning. So understand that this race isn't just about a light bill or a gas bill or telecom. This is about surviving and the ability for us to be excited about elections that are on the ballot and what we're going to do to begin to change that narrative. The last thing that I want to say to you all, and it's specific to this race, is going forward, these types of races, and Sabrina has done a good job in just keeping me accountable here, but just these races, these down ballot races, y'all, we could have at least 3 or 4 Democrats elected. We have some great candidates that run across the state. Some of them from right here in this part of Georgia. But what we tend to do is we vote for people because of popularity. And I'm going to watch what I say over the next 10 or 15 seconds. But it's a lot of people talking about running for governor that shouldn't be running for no governor. Okay. Now, I'm going to keep my opinion to myself. But what I will tell you is that we need to stop being hyper-focused at the top of the ticket and start thinking, who is it in Pooler and Brunswick and right here in this county? Who are the folks that need to run for attorney general? Who needs to run for school superintendent? State house seats, state senate seats. See, these are the conversations people aren't having. As a party, we only picked up 2 or 3 state legislative seats in the past 4 election cycles. Now, if my son brought home a D- and asked me if he did a good job for passing 2 tests, the 2 federal seats, we gonna have a whole nother not so positive conversation. And what we have done in our state is convinced us that as long as we get some national attention by having one popular person, everybody else is supposed to fall in line. And that's what happened with my race. A lot of y'all, we actually overperformed in coastal Georgia, so thank you. We did really well in this part of the state, right? But where people like me don't really, or have not in the past really been successful, is in people understanding, number one, what the race actually is, because this should be called a public utility commissioner. It's called a public service commissioner. So people are already thinking, like, is he a first responder? Like, what is public service, right? Because they don't know. And our party and our community's got to educate people. What does a county commissioner do? What does a school board member do? What does a city council member do? What's the mayor supposed to be doing? Right? These are conversations we got to have, right? And so when you think of the Public Service Commission in this race, for the first time in my lifetime, there's only one statewide race on the ballot, which means it's us against them. Exactly. We don't have to worry about no 15 other seats. And I'm sure the utility companies put money into it. I'm sure Brian Kemp is gonna probably try and do some things. Trump will probably come out here once or twice to try and drum up the support. But I believe it's more of us than them.
It is.
I believe it's more of us that if we knock on doors, if we call people, if we get people excited, I believe we can not only win in the primary, I believe we can win in November. And I want y'all to I'm not gonna ask you to close your eyes, but I want you to just think for 1 second about how hard you have worked over the last decade. Some of y'all over the last 20 years. I want you to think of how hard you have worked to come to the same end November after November. Disappointment, frustration. Some people had anxiety and panic attacks when Trump won the first time. I want y'all to think of everything you went through. And then I want you to think of how would you feel if we could say in November that we won. That's really what I want. That's really what this comes down to. Do you know what it would do to our base, and even folks that are thinking about not being active in the party? Do you know what it would do for people that said, you know what, we won in November? If we won Ossoff, Warnock, and Biden in 2021, and then in 2025, we get Blackmen in office, and then what can we do in 2026? Because now we know that there's a structure and a model that works. One of the last things, and this is the last thing I'll say, one of the last things I remember about working for the Biden administration was, I told my wife about this. There was a 90-year-old, 80 or 90-year-old brother right outside of Birmingham, Alabama. He was in a really bad community. They were on a landfill, a lot of environmental challenges. And he came to me in tears. And he had a piece of paper balled up, and he said, I want you to take this. And I said, sir, I can't take it because in my role, I'm not permitted to take information or literature from people for obvious reasons, more than anything else, for legal reasons. And he was in tears, and he said, sir, I need you to take this paper. And I couldn't take the paper, but one of my associates happened to get it from him, and we said, well, we'll be back. And when we opened the paper, he had a list of over 40 of his friends that had passed on that had been fighting for the issue that he felt that you can do something. He said, we never had somebody come down here. We never had somebody give us hope that something could happen. And he said, these names on this paper, because I went back and spoke to him after I saw the paper, I said, man, I'm gonna make sure we do something for your community. And what we ended up doing was what's called a national priorities listing, where we basically list a community that it's kind of like if a state called a state of emergency, they automatically get federal funding, right? When we do NPL, that immediately allows the community to get federal funds they would not have gotten. And I was able to do that. And I'm sharing that story with y'all because sometimes it just takes one win for us to be able to really see a picture that communities are facing. Like, I don't know what it's like to live in Savannah or Augusta after a flood and no help comes. Sometimes you gotta understand that when people go through stuff and you don't go through it with them, it's gonna be hard for you to come back and ask them for your support. So I'm asking y'all today, please support my campaign. This is not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth time I've been here. We've been here for vacation and for work. So I'm letting y'all know that we don't just come down here to campaign. We don't come and have a good time. But at the end of the day, I need your support. If you are capable and you want to support us financially, write us a check, whether it's $25 or $250 or whatever it is you give. Go to our website and sign up to volunteer so you can phone bank Coastal Georgia for us. But more than anything else, go to the polls. Early voting is May the 27th, if I'm not mistaken. And the election day is June the 17th. Go to the polls. When you go to church, let folks know, hey, it's an election. I'm telling y'all, man, if we do this, we're gonna win. And I want y'all to understand, the best story I heard was a guy named Tip O'Neill ran years ago. He said he went to his neighbor, and he said when he went to his neighbor, the paper said Tip O'Neill wins another term in Congress. And he looks at his neighbor and he said, man, thank you for voting for me. And his neighbor looked back at Tip and said, I didn't vote for you. And when Tip asked his neighbor, why didn't you vote for him? He said, well, Tip, you never asked me. So I'm asking you, please vote for me. Please support our campaign, and let's win in June and then win in November, okay? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll answer it, but if not, I want to be